Hey guys, CJ here with Elevated Systems. So this was supposed to be my full Intel Arc B580 Linux review, but spoiler alert, Battlemage isn't quite ready for prime time on Linux. Don't worry, I'm not going to bury the lead. This card has issues when it comes to Linux gaming, but instead of scrapping the video, I'm turning lemons into lemonade with my monthly Linux build showcase. This time, I'm putting together an Arch Linux-based gaming PC that, well, can't really game just yet. Fingers crossed that changes soon. Now, before I dive into the B580's Linux gaming performance, or somewhat lack thereof, let's talk about the build itself. I'll walk you through the components I picked, including the sleek new white wood version of the Lian Li Dancase A3. Yes, it's as cool as it sounds. I'll share some build notes, break down the Linux setup, and cover the testing process. And of course, we'll wrap things up by comparing how the Battlemage card performs on Linux versus Windows 11. Now, let's break down the components in this build, starting with the case. This is the Lian Li A3 MATX Mini Tower. While the A3 has been around for a bit, this new colorway just launched this week. It features a white mesh steel chassis paired with a maple wood slat front panel. Lian Li sent this over a while back, but I held on to it until one, it was available for sale, and two, I had a build cool enough to match its vibe. The case itself is identical to the other A3 variants, and since it's already been thoroughly reviewed, I didn't think it warranted a standalone review. Instead, I'll share what I liked and didn't like in the build notes section. As usual, I picked the case first, which heavily influenced the rest of the components. I decided to go with an all Intel build this time. The star of the show is the Intel Arc B580 GPU. I chose the ASRock Steel Legend OC version because it's the only white model available. Spec-wise, it's nearly identical to the Intel reference card, but it comes with a 130 MHz factory overclock and maintained a clock speed of 2850 MHz during my test. It's rated for the same 190 watt total board power, but features two 8-pin PCIe power connectors. The card also packs 12 gigabytes of 19 gigabit per second GDDR6 on a 192-bit bus, plus a triple fan cooler with flow-through design, which is dead silent and idle thanks to its 0 RPM mode. I snagged this at Micro Center for $270 on the morning it launched. For the CPU, I went with Intel's last good processor, the i7-12700K. This 12-core 20-thread Alder Lake chip can boost up to 5 GHz and doesn't suffer from the flawed clock tree circuit found in the 13th and 14th gen Intels, meaning no premature degradation despite undervolting. Unlike Intel's newer Core Ultra lineup, this CPU offers excellent price to performance. There are better gaming CPUs at around the same price, specifically the Ryzen 5700X 3D, but at under $200, the 12700K is arguably the best all-around CPU in this range, especially when you factor in productivity, content creation, and other workflows I planned on testing before I ran into some issues. I picked it up for $190 a few weeks ago, but possibly thanks to Gamers Nexus 12 Gen revisit video, prices have crept back up to about $200. If you don't need quick sync or plan to pair it with an Intel GPU, the KF variant is an even better deal at under $175. For the motherboard, I chose the ASRock B760M Pro. This micro ATX board ticks all the right boxes for this build. The first M.2 slot is positioned high enough to avoid taking up the first PCI slot, which is a common annoyance with my Ryzen boards. This lets me install the GPU in the top slot while leaving room for 25mm thick fans below it. The board also features an easily accessible open M.2 Wi-Fi slot, making it easy to install a Linux-friendly Intel AX210 Wi-Fi 6E adapter. Unfortunately, my Wi-Fi antenna cables were just a bit too short to be useful. Story of my life. Plus, it's a DDR5 board priced competitively at just $160. For memory, I stuck with my trusty Corsair Vengeance 32GB DDR5 6000 CL30 kit and Crucial P3 Plus 2TB SSD. Building a PC is expensive, so I reuse parts where I can. If you want to see fresh, all brand new parts in every build, smash that subscribe button and let YouTube know my content is worth sharing. I don't take money from any companies for promotional videos or ad reads, so my builds are funded by your views. Also, Amazon gives me a meager 2.5 commission when you use my affiliate links, so I've included links in the description for alternate memory kits that will work good with this build. This case supports a top-mounted 360mm AIO, but the only white one I had was the Deepcool LS720, who are on Uncle Sam's naughty list and can't sell things in the US anymore. During my trip to Micro Center, I found the Montech Hyperflow ARGB 240 for under $90 and decided to give it a shot. I'm glad I did. It keeps the 12700K's 125 watt TDP in check with peak temps hitting just 67 degrees Celsius. Finally, the power supply. I originally had a white Asus Prime PSU for this build, but I ended up needing it for a server build. Links in the description. As a backup, I considered an SFX unit to save space and reduce cable clutter, but that didn't pan out, so I grabbed my trusty Be Quiet Pure Power 11FM 750 watt off the shelf, and it worked like a charm. Now, I strategically included all the build footage during the component overview, or I will in the future when I edit this video, which will have happened already when you're watching this, but the important part is I'll be able to skip the gratuitous build montage, which I already did because the PC is already built, so I'll just be able to roll into my build notes, which I'll do right now. The first thing I noticed when I cracked open this case, no pre-installed fans. That's pretty standard for Lee's higher tier cases, but rare for their sub $100 budget options. Luckily, I had a triple pack of Arctic P12 ARGB white fans on hand, but that does add another $40 to the total build cost. Another thing that stood out, there's nowhere to hide or tie down excess cables in this case. Seriously, not a single hidden hook. However, unlike the Asus AP201 or the Sama IM01 Pro, there's no inner shroud to cover the PSU and hide the mess of cables visible through the side mesh. Despite my best efforts to tie everything down tightly, the build still looks a bit chaotic through the mesh panel. Other than the PSU and cable situation, I didn't run into any major issues with this build. There's plenty of room to work with, lots of flexibility, and honestly, the finished product still looks fantastic overall. Just be prepared to spend some extra time with managing cables or embrace the industrial chic look. With the PC built, it's time to install the Linux distro. This month, I'm going with Arco Linux. Listen, I'd love to feature a pure vanilla Arch install someday, but let's be real. Diving into a text-based line-by-line installation process would send all the Linux curious viewers I'm trying to pull into the community running for the hills. For beginner, that's some scary stuff. Arco Linux gives us the best of both worlds. Arch Linux, but with a user-friendly Calamares installer, a pre-configured desktop environment, and some handy custom tools to make learning Linux easier. It's basically Arch Linux with training wheels, and I'm not ashamed to say, I dig it. Now, here's how easy it is. I grabbed the ArcNet ISO and dumped it into my Ventoy drive. Now, the Arco team doesn't recommend using Ventoy, but I've never had any issues. And by the way, if you're unfamiliar with setting up and using Ventoy to test and install multiple Linux distros, I've got a video for that. Before installation, the only UEFI tweak I needed was disabling secure boot, then booted into Ventoy, selected the Arco Linux ISO, and launched into the live environment where I fired up the Calamares installer. From there, it's easier than installing Windows. A few clicks, a quick restart, and boom, I was up and running with Arco Linux and a clean, simple XFCE desktop environment. Now, for the nerdy details. For initial support of the Battlemage XE2 graphics, you'll need Linux kernel 6.12 and Mesa 24.3, which are the latest stable releases with updates from Intel. I typically stick to stable kernels and drivers for testing because, well, one, stability matters, and two, compiling and installing development versions isn't exactly beginner friendly, and three, they're often buggy. That said, Linux kernel 6.13 and Mesa 25 are out there in development and do offer some Battlemage improvements, allegedly, but they're incomplete and still being tested. A patch that fixes one thing can easily break something else, and since I can't validate results on unstable, in-progress build that update daily, I stick to stable releases for official reviews, but you're going to see that I'm soon to break that rule. Arch Linux is a rolling release distro, so updates roll out as soon as they're stable. After installation and a quick system update, Mesa 24.3 was installed, but the system was still running. Zen kernel 6.11, upgrading to 6.12 Zen was an easy fix though. Quick side note, along with the technical issues in the review, my video production hit a snag when my display capture device died, so yeah, I had to go old school and point a camera at the monitor to capture what was happening. Fun times. Anyway, with the system updated, I installed Steam, GE Proton, Mango HUD, and 5 games and got to testing. For testing, I chose Baldur's Gate 3, Black Myth Wukong, Counter-Strike 2, Cyberpunk 2077, and Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. These games aren't just demanding, but also fresh in my mind from testing them on over 10 other GPUs for a recent review. Since Intel is targeting the B580 at 1440p, that's where I focused. I started with Baldur's Gate 3 on the Ultra Graphics preset, and while the game ran and looked okay, the B580's performance clearly wasn't competing with the RTX 4060 or RX 7600 as advertised. Then came Black Myth Wukong, where things fell apart. Textures and shaders were an absolute mess, far more distracting than any performance issues. Counter-Strike 2 was better, running without major graphical problems, but the frame rates were still underwhelming. Meanwhile, Cyberpunk 2077 mirrored Wukong's issues with a glitchy combination of textures and shaders, making it unplayable. Finally, Space Marine 2 struggled to hit playable frame rates and also showed noticeable shader issues. Out of the 5 games, 3 had major graphical problems, 2 were unplayable, and all showed disappointing performance. So, hoping for a miracle, I broke my own rule and compiled and installed the latest development versions of Linux 6.13 and Mesa 25. Long story short, it made things worse. Baldur's Gate 3, Counter-Strike 2, and Space Marine saw no improvements, while the shader issues in Cyberpunk and Warhammer remained. Worst of all, Wukong now crashed to desktop whenever I tried to load into the benchmarker of the game. At first glance, the B580 doesn't seem ready for Linux gaming. Now, before you start hammering away on your keyboard with try this fix or you should have done that, let me assure you, I tried it all. I spent 2 full days going through every possible solution. The obvious first steps, delete and recompile the shaders, did that multiple times. I even installed Arch Linux on one of my Intel mini PCs, compiled the Cyberpunk shaders there, and transferred them to this system. Still, no luck. I tried every graphic setting imaginable, and while I saw minor improvements, nothing made the game truly playable. I tested every version of Proton available, thinking maybe the issue was with X11. I stripped XFCE, installed GNOME, and switched to Wayland. No dice. I tried every Steam launch option I could think of, troubleshot for memory leak issues, reinstalled the motherboard BIOS, and triple-checked every UEFI setting. I even forced Vulkan API on launch, enabled asynchronous shader compilation, and disabled multi-threading. None of it worked. And somewhere in all this, I realized I'd fallen into the classic troubleshooting trap, chasing a software problem while overlooking the basics. The one variable that had changed was the introduction of new hardware, so I decided to test that theory. I rolled the system back to my initial stable install, removed the B580, and popped in my trusty Intel Arc A750. Instantaneously, everything worked. Cyberpunk 2077 ran flawlessly with beautiful visuals and the performance I expected from the A750. At this point, I had to consider that possibly my B580 was a dud, but to confirm, I installed Windows 11 and retested the card. Turns out the B580 worked perfectly on Windows. Cyberpunk 2077 was error-free, the graphical fidelity was stunning, and the performance was exactly where it should be. This card is an absolute beast at 1440p for just $250. Its upscaling and ray tracing features aren't just gimmicks, they're actually impressive, especially at this price point. But this is a Linux build, so let's get back to the B580 and Arco Linux for a direct comparison with Windows 11 performance. Starting with Baldur's Gate 3, Linux performance fell short by nearly 29% compared to Windows on the same system. What's more interesting is that while FSR gave the game a significant boost on Windows, performance actually dropped slightly when upscaling on Linux. Black Myth Wukong was unplayable on Linux due to the graphical issues and frequent crashes, but it ran beautifully on Windows. One thing to note here is that Wukong doesn't have an option to completely disable upscaling, so the comparison was between XeSS and FSR. Interestingly, but not surprisingly, Intel's XeSS fell short, delivering about 6% lower performance than FSR. In Counter-Strike 2, Linux again lagged significantly behind Windows. While FSR provided a marginal uplift in performance, it wasn't anything substantial for either operating system. Cyberpunk 2077 was also unplayable on Linux. On Windows, however, the B580 performed exceptionally well, and XeSS delivered a noticeable performance boost, showing Intel's upscaling tech can shine when conditions are right. Finally, there's Warhammer 40k, Space Marine 2. Despite the lighting artifacts on Linux, the game was technically playable, at least with FSR and frame generation enabled. In fact, enabling these features gave a massive 158% boost to average FPS. That said, even with those gains, Linux was still trailing significantly behind Windows in terms of overall performance. Now, while there could be several reasons for the performance problems we're seeing, the most likely culprit is that Mesa development just isn't as refined as Intel's Windows drivers yet. The good news, Intel clearly put more time and effort into ensuring their Windows drivers were ready for Battlemage's launch compared to the earlier Alchemist series. And like AMD, Intel employs developers dedicated to contributing to Mesa and upstreaming GPU improvements. But here's the thing, Intel's developers are just one part of the equation. Mesa is a massive collaboration project with hundreds of contributors, and the core maintainers now have to integrate Intel's code changes, address bugs, and resolve compatibility issues to ensure everything runs smoothly. And I'm pretty confident that by the time we get a stable release of Mesa 25, many of the graphical glitches I encountered will be resolved, and the performance gap between Linux and Windows will shrink significantly. Now, if you were hoping for instant, flawless Linux compatibility with Battlemage, or you're thinking about adding the B580 to your Linux setup today, these results might feel disappointing. But there's no reason for FOMO just yet. Thanks to this card's incredible price to performance ratio and glowing reviews, it's sold out almost everywhere. Hopefully, stock will return soon, and by then Linux support may have improved. And when that happens, I'll revisit the B580 for a full Linux review. In the meantime, I'm keeping this PC together to continue testing it on both Windows and Linux as updates roll out. But what do you think of the build? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button, and if you loved it, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.